Well, let's talk now about a new program happening right here in Washington, D.C. The D.C. Department of Corrections is joining about 100 other correctional institutions with what's called video visitation. Here's a little piece from the D.C. Department of Corrections explaining what this is all about.
The Department of Corrections Video Visitation Center is housed within the D.C. General Hospital complex adjacent to the D.C. Jail in southeast Washington, D.C. Those wishing to visit inmates housed at the jail are no longer required to stand in long lines, undergo extensive security checks, or be subject to pat-down searches to enter the facility. Instead, with video visitation, family members, friends, and other visitors simply set a visitation appointment by telephone or through the internet.
So the deal for this technology was reached between the D.C. City Council and a company called Global Tel-Link. Global Tel-Link installed it for free, and according to the Department of Corrections, the calls are also free. And the purpose is to, quote, make the jail run more efficiently. My guest now is Ivy Finkenstadt, a staff attorney with the D.C. Prisoners Project. Ivy, welcome to the show. I know the D.C. Prisoners Project has spoken out against this technology. What are your concerns?
I just want to say it's the D.C. Prisoners Project of the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Urban Affairs.
Okay, that probably doesn't
fit. So we have a full, long title, but we're speaking out about this primarily because it replaces all visitation in person at the jail rather than being a supplement to the existing visitation policy. So instead of being able to go into the same room with your loved one and see them through a partition, you are separated by 500 yards across the street in another building and then have to call in by video phone.
What do you make of these arguments, though? These are what the D.C. Department of Corrections is saying, that it's more comfortable for prisoners, that it saves the DOC $420,000, and it's generally a more efficient system.
Well, efficiency is yet to be tested. It's shiny and new, so we don't really know exactly what's going to happen if there is some sort of a breakdown in the technology, or when staff gets overrun with how many people may be coming in, or the online registration system breaks down, or something like that. In terms of its comfort for family and friends, that it may be the case that it might have more air conditioning, or it may alleviate having to stand in lines or be searched. However, that doesn't really replace a child being able to go up to the window and speak to their father or their loved one, and to be able to do that in a really more private, intimate way. One thing that you mentioned was the cost. It is actually not there. The Department of Corrections has said there's no cost to the clients, to the prisoners or the families. However, Global Tel-Link can't really be doing this for free.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, of course, a big communications company wants to make money somehow. So is this something where it's going to be free for the first year? Or, I mean, have you guys looked into this?
The prisoners have been afraid that that's what's going to happen, like it's going to be a bait and switch. The Department of Corrections has gone on the record and said that's not the case. We have discovered that Global Tel-Link actually runs a program that if you contract with them exclusively for your telephones, not this video visitation system, they will basically give you this as a perk of using them as their exclusive contract. What that means is that in the competitive bidding process, maybe families could have gotten lower rates on their regular telephone calls with their loved ones, but instead they're getting a higher rate of telephone call on those regular phone calls, and then the Department of Corrections is getting this basically kickback.
Now, I think it's important that what you mentioned, that this is not a program where family members can choose. I either want to do the face-to-face or I don't want to wait in line. So it is completely replacing these face-to-face visits. And I know that the Federal Bureau of Prisons has even said that face-to-face visits are important for prisoners. And some of the prisons that are adopting this do have the option. Talk a little bit about the significance that this is the only option here in D.C.
Because the District of Columbia is unique among jurisdictions, this is extremely important for keeping family connections. DC, unlike maybe Maryland right next door or Virginia, sends all of its prisoners who have a felony conviction into the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The closest location where you can visit somebody who is in the BOP is in Winton, North Carolina, just south of the Virginia border, or in Cumberland, Maryland. If anyone's ever been out to Deep Creek Lake, they know that that's a pretty hefty drive in and of itself. Also, these people are mostly in rural areas, so even if you wanted to go visit your family member in West Virginia, it would be in a location that would be hard to travel to and expensive to stay overnight. So this means that this window of opportunity that they have while their loved one is local in the DC jail is exceptionally important for their family connections.
I guess, you know, I looked around a little bit to see why this policy change was necessary, and I couldn't really find, you know, a substantive reason given for why this switch was made. What are you seeing?
Well, now that I know that Global Tellink is involved, I actually think it has a lot to do with the contracting with the telephones, not the video phones, but the telephones. So that in the bidding process to get a telephone contract, the district has made this choice to get basically a bonus from their contract, instead of changing the cost to the families and lowering that cost.
Are there also concerns, though, that with these video chats that these will be, I mean, when we talk about the DC prison, these are people who have been arrested but not yet convicted, as you say. So, I mean, what if, you know, the prisoner says something to a loved one on a video chat? Can that be used as evidence in a court case?
It's very possible that these could be recorded. One of the reasons that the Department of Corrections wanted to do this, or stated reasons rather, is that it would be more secure. And the phone calls that people make from the prison are monitored. And it's possible that these video chats could also be recorded for later preservation.
Very, very interesting stuff. As you say, a whole lot here yet to be determined, but we appreciate you talking about what you guys know so far. Ivy Finkenstadt, staff attorney at the DC's Prisoner Project. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.